Hello and welcome back to another episode of a Weekly Waypoint Deluxe Edition, because today not only is it the 7-year anniversary to the day of this weekly series, that's 366 episodes without missing a single week, by the way, but I am also celebrating it by showing off Dave Mirra's BMX 2, which was my first quote-unquote Tony Hawk's game, and we'll get into talking about that in just a minute. But yes, it's a long episode because I want to show off all the levels, and they're 3-minute runs instead of 2-minute runs in this game, which does not help. But I'm sure we'll figure out some things to talk about. I'm sure I can fill the silence along the way. I used to put chapters in these videos regarding topics and stuff. I'll do that again for this one. It's something I should probably get back into doing. This is not going to become the new normal length of an episode, don't you worry. But for this week only, we're going to have an entire 37 minutes of waffling, so grab a snack, sit down, get cozy, maybe put me on your second screen for the sake of sanity, and let's get into it. As I've previously mentioned during the Tony Hawk's retrospective, which this is still kind of part of, and that's not over, by the way, we've still got some games to check out in that regard. We'll be back to that next week. But I've mentioned that I did not own any of the Tony Hawk's games on PS1, and when we got our PS2, we got 3 games with it. I don't entirely remember what the other 2 games were. I think one was Extreme G Racing, the third game in that series. I think the other might have been Smuggler's Run, or it could have been something else, but I definitely know for sure that one of our launch title games, or I don't know if it's a launch title game, but one of the games that we got with our PS2 as a family was Dave Mirra's BMX 2. And I was not a bike kid, okay? I didn't own a bike. I didn't care about owning a bike. And when I saw this game and it's kind of what I considered at the time to be bland cover art, I looked at it and went, oh, why's Dad got us boring games? Thankfully, I never voiced this out loud. I wasn't quite that tactless. And I don't think he watches the Weekly Waypoint. If you do, Dad, don't worry, because I grew to love it quite quickly. Considering that we didn't have many games, I decided to fire it up and give it a go. And yeah, I found myself loving this game pretty quickly. As I mentioned, I hadn't played any of the Tony Hawk's games before or anything like it. It was my first, I guess the genre is extreme action sports game, maybe? Shrug. And I just had endless fun doing the projectives. By the way, what we're doing right now is a session where we're just trying to get a high score in 3 minutes. That is not the main game mode of this game, for those unaware. It has an entire career mode akin to Tony Hawk's Underground 1 and 2, I suppose, but with less narrative. Maybe like Pro Skater 4? I haven't really played Pro Skater 4, but you have these things called projectives where they say, hey, can you go and smash all of these crates in the level, or hey, can you see if you can do like this particular trick in this particular area across this particular gap? You know how it goes. This game was very obviously influenced by the Tony Hawk series, but I think it has charms all of its own. This was my first time properly playing through this game since probably since I was a kid, and I gotta say, it's still fun. I am playing it poorly, I apologize for that. Did I mention it's been decades? But while the gameplay obviously derives from Tony Hawk's games, I think it's different. It's less about stringing together massive combos, and it's a little bit more individualistic in the types of tricks you want to pull off to get points. There are combos, but it's more about, like, you get little things popping up saying, oh, it's your longest grind, it's your longest, or it's your biggest airtime and stuff like that. And of course, it being a bike game instead of a board game. Wait, I just realized board game is a whole separate thing. Anyway, the physics feel different in a suitably different and interesting way. Now, I have some very fond memories of this game. Obviously, we're playing it with the soundtrack turned off because I would like not to get nuked from orbit by the copyright sharks. But I do find the soundtrack to this game very nostalgic, and I remember it made me feel kind of introspective even as a kid playing through it, and I kind of came up with the music and the level ordering in my head of this kind of narrative in my own head about the idea that this was a story about a kid running away from home on his bike. And I think the second level being a train yard level really helps that. The idea being the first level is his home neighborhood, this level is him getting away from home, and then the rest of it is just him touring the world, I guess. This wasn't a wish fulfillment thing, by the way. I'm lucky enough to say I had a good childhood. But I think it's a fun example of how even from an early age, I, as someone who is a writer, if you didn't know, it's another aspect of my personality. I was, my imagination, I just let it run wild as a kid, and even things I was already playing, I overlaid my own stories on. And again, this was before I ever played Tony Hawk's Underground, where they actually did make a narrative of a similar sort of thing. Maybe I played this beforehand, and I wasn't thinking that way, and then I played Underground, and then I came back to this, and I kind of overlaid that story on top. I no longer remember. Have I mentioned it's been decades? But yeah, it was fun. I never played the Tom Hoffman's BMX games. I don't know how different they are to these games. I don't know if they were developed by a different games company. This was by Acclaim. Rest in peace, Acclaim. They made so many of my kind of lesser known favorite PS2 era games, and this is one of them. This might be one of the only ones left that I have not covered in some way, shape or form on the channel. And I thought it would be both a appropriate thing timing wise to slot in after getting to Underground 2 in our playthrough of the Tony Hawk series, and also just a fun kind of like nostalgic look back at one of my favourite games that doesn't get talked about all too often as part of a 7-year anniversary of a weekly Waypoint. I think it's 7 years, I should really go and check that. Yes it is. 7 years ago today, the weekly deathmatch, as it was called then, number 1 Overwatch Predicting Hindsight. This looks a tad muddy. I'll upload future deathmatches in 1080p, reads the description. I can't believe I ever thought it would be okay to upload a video in 720p in 2018. When you've had as many anniversaries as I have in this series, it can feel a little pointless to talk about why I started doing this and stuff, because I've covered that stuff before, but I do get more views than I used to, so I might as well talk a little bit about it. For those of you who are unaware, I've done YouTube pretty much all my life, pretty much since the very first instant I was able to. I'm 29 years old as of the time of recording, but I got onto the internet and YouTube and stuff probably when I was around 11 or 12. Not sure I would recommend that these days, but hey, it was a different time. And instantly, I wanted to make my own YouTube videos. I was so desperate to do so that I didn't even care what they were. I just cared about the ability to make something and upload it. And for some reason, the first way I figured out how to do that was to download game trailers on my PSP and get them from my PSP onto the PC and upload them that way. I didn't have the first clue of how to record my screen or gameplay or anything, and to be fair, back then it was less of a common thing and there was less technology dedicated to it. But yeah, my Kritigri Live channel that I used to have for VODs is kind of defunct now. It's kind of a nothing channel again, but that was originally a channel called KBlue10 where I still have all of my original uploads privatized on there. Just the other day, my friend said to me, hey, do you remember when we used to play Minecraft back in like 2010 when the game was nothing like it is now and we used to just go on public servers and it would be absolute chaos? And I said, yes, not only do I remember that, I have video footage of that because I am who I am and I archive everything. And yeah, I consider that channel's archive, like personal archive, to be a blessing. At some point I want to go back through it and kind of do some sort of content about revisiting that old stuff, but there will be some videos in there that I probably want to keep private. Nothing crazy, but just stuff that shows my face or voice in a time when I wasn't comfortable with, etc, etc. Anyway, point being, YouTube and creating YouTube videos has been part of my life for pretty much my entire life. And this channel, and the Weekly Waypoint specifically, and a series a little bit before it called the Roguelike Ramble, was kind of like my rebooting era of like, I'm an adult now, I kind of took a few years break from doing this, but I've realized I still want to be doing this. I want to see if I can do a weekly series and stick to it and not miss a week. And yeah, as I mentioned at the top of this video, it's been 7 years, I have not missed a week. I think on my 2-year anniversary, I was like, okay, I've proven to myself that I can do this now. I might skip a week here and there if I'm not feeling up to it. Turns out, I just love making the weekly Waypoint so much that there hasn't been a single week since then that I've gone, I'll probably give it a miss this week. I still love making weekly videos just as much as I did 7 years ago when I set out to start doing it. And it's funny because I've gone back to that video, which I kind of like tongue-in-cheek named Predicting Hindsight, the first episode of Weekly Waypoint that is, because I had started efforts at weekly series before in different formats, you know, not just videos, but like, oh, I'm going to write a short story every week or whatever. And they had fallen flat not long after starting. So predicting hindsight was kind of me going, oh, look, it's going to be a long form thing. And I'm going to be looking back on this in years and being like, look what I did for years of my life. But it's fun to look at that video title and be like, hey, it actually worked out. That actually is me predicting hindsight, and this is the hindsight that I was predicting. But the fun thing about going back and watching that video now is back then I thought, you know, I've been doing YouTube for years, I know how to do the commentary thing. And now I go back and I watch it and I go, wow, I was not good at the commentary thing. In fact, recently I put out an Assassin's Creed Brotherhood video, which was made up of footage that I had recorded about 2 years ago. And even in that, I was like, oh, my commentary or my jokes or my humour isn't as quote-unquote good as I think it is now if I'm gonna try and objectively criticise myself, which is always a tricky road. But yeah, I guess it turns out that we're always growing and evolving as creators. Who knew? Anyway, time to give myself my annual pat on the back. That was kind of painful. I shouldn't have done that so low down. Oh god, I really am aging. I'm aging in real time. Thank you for indulging me on that little history lesson / trip down memory lane / self-indulgent. Oh, look at me, I've done this for 7 years thing. It's not the wildest milestone. If I'm honest, I think I'm more pleased with last week's milestone, which was I've done... It's really hard to sum up quickly, but if you didn't watch last week's video, I mentioned that with 365 episodes, I had made enough consecutive weekly episodes that you could watch an episode a day and be caught up in a year. And that weekly to daily ratio just kind of tickles me, it's kind of fun. Remind me never to pull up Marvel Comics and reset the numbering and call it Volume 2, because then we will take away from that bit of fun. Oh, but we have so much video left. What are we gonna spend it talking about? Well, thankfully, this has been a subject-rich week. I want to talk to you about several video games, the first of which is, of course, Oblivion Remastered, which released this week, to surprise and shock and people saying, ah, dang, I thought this was meant to come out yesterday, which is a weird thing for a surprise drop. But such is the nature of semi-reliable leaks. Now, my first entry into the Elder Scrolls series was Skyrim, and I sunk, of course, hundreds of hours into that. It's one of my favourite games of all time, etc, etc. But I have also spent a decent chunk of time in its younger sibling, its older sibling, I always forget how that works, Oblivion! In fact, some of my favourite videos I've ever made on this channel have come from Oblivion. Adventures in Cyrodiil, I call it. You can go back and watch them if you like. I just uploaded a new entry, and it's all about Remastered now. But them's the jokes and the reactions. This is where you come to hear my professional opinion about the game. Ooh. But yeah, there were rumours of Oblivion for months and months and months, and I talked about them at length in this series and many others. It is something that I desperately wanted to be true, because Bethesda have released Skyrim about 500,000 times, and most of us have just been sat here going, Skyrim's great. Skyrim's fine. Skyrim doesn't need attention. Modernize your old games. Let people who started with Skyrim go back and revisit the previous games with more of a modern coat of paint, because goddamn do I want to enjoy Morrowind. I really enjoy ESO Morrowind, but that's not Morrowind. And I guess the first kind of hint at how I feel about Oblivion Remastered can be found in me saying, I really hope they get this same team to go back and do this to Morrowind as well. Oblivion Remastered is kind of a remake. It kind of muddies the waters between what a remaster and what a remake is. Because underneath the swanky new graphics, you've got the old game, which would indicate remaster. But they've also done up the combat just a little bit and changed the leveling system just a little bit, and they've changed the voice lines just a little bit. And that veers into remake territory, but then it's not really a remake because it's still the original game with a coat of paint. It's just that that coat of paint has ventured into other aspects of the game. It definitely turns it into a grey area, and I see why they decided to call it Oblivion Remastered, since that is a product they are selling and they don't want to overpromise in the title. I find myself calling it Oblivion Remastered and Oblivion Remake interchangeably. I'm sure you will understand if I do so in this video. But yeah, my first impressions, my very first impressions when they announced it with the trailer and everything was, I was incredibly excited. I thought it looked fantastic in the trailer. I slightly cried, if I'm being perfectly honest. If it hadn't been releasing that day, making the video moot, you would have got a reaction video of me reacting to the unveiling of it. But unfortunately, the universe kind of conspired against me with this one, because the game got revealed and dropped just as I had to go to work, and when I thought I had it downloading while I was at work, it turns out that no, sleep mode downloads on Xbox are a big fat lie. Or at least when I configured my Xbox to do that, for some reason the configuration didn't go through or whatever, I don't know. All I know is I came home very late at night, very exhausted from work, hoping to get a few hours in, and finding out I still had to download 75% of a damn game. So when I did finally get in to play the game, it was 2 AM, I was tired and frustrated, and to top it all off, the Series S version of the game is not... well, I mean, it's not awful, don't get me wrong, but comparing it to the trailer and the hype, it was not what I was hoping for. If you go check out my Adventures in Cyrodiil video that I put out yesterday, you can actually see, I zoom in at one point, you can see when you move your arms around on screen, there is artifacting, like a little ghosting effect, and I'm not sure what causes it. I'm guessing something to do with the AI upscaling they're having to use because the Series S can't run it in native HD or some shit. But yeah, it felt weird, and it looked a bit muddy, and I just wasn't having as good of a time as I was expecting to have, so I downloaded it on PC. I finally bit the bullet, uninstalled Final Fantasy XIV, which I've been trying to just leave installed on my PC this entire time, and installed it on my primary SSD so I wouldn't have to deal with loading issues. And that's when we got to the good stuff. There was definitely a part of me that went, oh right, yeah, it is still Oblivion. It is still an old game, but it's a game that I enjoy, and I think the further you get into a save file, the more fun you naturally have in those kind of games. And yeah, it's just gorgeous on PC at least, on high settings at least, and it's a game I want to be playing right now, and it's a game that I'm really excited exists. Wait, that's not proper grammar, but we'll let it slide. It's my 7-year anniversary doing this shit, alright? We're allowed to let improper grammar slide just this once. And, you know, those 365 other times too. But yeah, unlike the other surprise drop that happened recently in one of my favourite gaming franchises, RuneScape Dragon Wilds, where I was really excited about it, then played it for like 3 hours and went, alright, this is in a genre that I have issues with. With Oblivion Remastered, I've actually been getting to it. I've actually been spending the time. I've actually been getting invested. And just having such a lovely time. I'm so pleased. I'm so happy. This is kind of everything I wanted it to be. I don't really have any complaints. I can't really think of any. Like, I've never been a big modding guy, so I'm not one of those, oh, but the mods people. I've noticed local maps are missing, I guess. There's a complaint. I don't know what it is with Bethesda and local maps these days, but, you know, Starfield didn't have them for the longest time. They've taken them out of Oblivion Remastered for some reason, even though that's probably a virtuoso thing. Local maps! They're handy! If I'm in a dungeon, and I don't know where I'm going. 99% sure the original game had them. But yeah, for those of you not interested in checking out the series, I am an Argonian Spellblade. Is it Spellblade? It's the one where you have a sword and you have a spell. And I'm kind of doing the main quest line semi-casually, and I'm kind of doing the Mages Guild a little bit. And something I've not really gotten embroiled in with Oblivion so far has just been the side quests that you find out in the world, because I've been focusing on getting the achievements done in the original version. And I will be doing that in this version as well for a little bit, but I want to let myself get distracted a little bit more. So yeah, I've been doing that, and it's been a really cool time. There's still tons for me to discover in Oblivion that I've never seen before. I've probably sunk about 60 hours into different versions of a game over the years, at a guess, and there's more to it than the 60 hours. And while playing, I've just had moments where I've just been struck by, oh god, I love the Elder Scrolls universe. I just love it. The different races, the different countries and continents and factions, and I just love it so much. The mythology, the bizarre lore, it's so fun. I was just reading about the Warp in the West from an in-game book, which is kind of it's not a summary of the events of Daggerfall, but it's kind of like, you know, seen from the outside, the effects of it, and I've never played Daggerfall, so it's just kind of a very strange and interesting read. Meanwhile, Cyrodiil is burning behind me, and I'm just going, ooh, a new book. Strangely analogous to real life, that. But yeah, having played most of the story content in ESO, it's really benefited me as an Elder Scrolls fan playing the mainline games, because when locations are mentioned in books, I have an idea of where they are and what they look like and what their history is and what it's like there. Which was, to me, the very selling point of ESO when it was first released so long ago. ESO is also now easily the Elder Scrolls game that I've spent the most amount of time in, quite naturally so, because it is an MMO, it is designed to be that kind of a game. But that does mean that whenever I play a mainline entry now, I'm kind of playing a game set in the future from my perspective, because The Elder Scrolls Online is a prequel which takes place in the second era. Not super effectively different because, you know, landscapes and visual things don't really change across the thousands of years of Elder Scrolls lore like they really should do. It's mostly just factions and allegiances, and for some reason where the Fighters Guild and Mages Guild buildings are in a town. Alright, there's enough of that. Would you like to hear about an impulse buy I made this week? Because I was really tempted to get the World of Warcraft Mists of Pandaria character boost pre-order bundle thing, because I have still yet to have a character at max level in Classic, and I did start playing properly when Mists of Pandaria first came out, and those cosmetics do look alright. But, it's £65, fam. It doesn't need to be £65, does it? Blizzard really are getting ridiculous with their stuff lately. And while I am currently in the very fortunate position of actually being able to grab that, which I'm not usually in, and that is why I was tempted by it, I just can't. I just can't spend that much money on such an insubstantial thing. I just can't bring myself to spend that when I know it's not worth it. Mists of Pandaria V expansion pack came out at £30 or £40 for the deluxe edition back in the day. I went and checked, and with WoW Classic, the actual expansion itself isn't included because it's just released for free, so despite being tempted by it, I decided to spend money on a video game instead, and I went and I picked up Last Epoch. Epoch? I don't know. Last Epoch, that's what we're going with, is probably third place in a trinity of the most popular isometric ARPGs on the market right now. In the same way that you might argue that MMOs is World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, and Guild Wars 2, isometric ARPGs are also kind of Diablo 4, Path of Exile 2, and Last Epoch. At least that's the vibe I'm getting. I know there's also other popular ones in there like Grim Dawn, don't get me wrong. There's also other popular MMOs in there like RuneScape and stuff. But yes, I am forever chasing that Diablo 3 high, which I will surely never truly find again. But Last Epoch, I really don't know how to say this word. Something about it just appeals to me. And when you ask an isometric ARPG gamer what they like most about their isometric ARPG, what they look for, you're supposed to say a really good endgame, a really interesting loot system, a good build system, good classes, good interesting ways to progress your character. And all of that is true, of course it is. But one of the reasons I love Diablo 3 is the setting. And I don't know, something about the gameplay style in a good, interesting fantasy setting is something that I am about. And Diablo 4, for whatever reason, just fails me in that regard. Don't get me wrong, I love a grimdark, like, fantasy world. I love a gothic aesthetic. But Diablo 3 soaks in it just a little too much, as well as refusing to be a sequel to Diablo 3 in any meaningful way. And I think that's one of the reasons why, despite I recently checked my surprisingly high amount of hours in the game, it's like 80 hours, I thought it was like 30. I just haven't got into Diablo 4 the same way that I've got into Diablo 3 in the past, and I don't think I ever really will. Also, the egregious cosmetic microtransaction prices do sour the taste a little bit. Blizzard are really developing a problem in that regard. And I'm gonna be real, Path of Exile does not appeal to me. I've tried Path of Exile several times. I'll try Path 2 when it goes free to play, I'm sure. But just the general vibe of Rayclast, I think their world is called, and the general feel of the game, that kind of ethereal thing that's hard to put into words, just does not vibe with me. Last Epoch, on the other hand, is really cool. I'm only in Act 2, full disclaimer. I have every opportunity of falling off this game like I do with most other ARPGs at some point. But this game is set in a world where the different act structure is divided into different times. So you have this world to explore, but you also visit the same parts of this world during different eras of it. During, if you must know, a primitive era, a divine era, an imperial era, and a ruined era. And they all have their own kind of enemy types and stories going on, and it's just really cool. I really like that as a narrative hook, and from what I've played so far, I'm not going to pretend it's like an incredible story or whatever, but I would say it's on par with a decent, for instance, World of Warcraft expansion leveling experience, where you're like, yeah, this story is fun. It's not breaking any records, it's not breaking my mind, but it's got fun lore, it's got fun characters, it's got fun villains. Nothing that's going to be extremely memorable, but stuff to enjoy in the moment. I guess it's kind of pulpy might be the word I'm looking for. Well, that's not quite the right word, but it's in the same neighborhood. It's just a decent time in pretty environments with a theme that I really enjoy. I'm really enjoying the lore of Act 2, and I won't spoil where it goes because there might be people who are interested in picking it up for themselves. Apparently this game is kind of experiencing a resurgence right now. I didn't even know that when I picked it up. I just looked in my wishlist for a game that might be tickling my fancy. But with the release of Season 2, people seem to be flocking to it because apparently both Diablo 4 and Path of Exile 2 are having problems. And so if you are a Diablo 4 or a Path of Exile 2 player looking for somewhere else to go for a minute, maybe go give that game a look. I can't speak to the gearing or the endgame or the building of the characters or anything that we're supposed to care about as isometric ARPG players at the moment, but I can just tell you that right now it feels good and I'm really interested in playing more. I couldn't find, I mean, I guess I didn't dig that hard, but I couldn't find a single review which mentioned any of these things which I'm mentioning now, so hopefully that has helped someone somewhere with the same priorities that I have. I think if I sink, when I sink more time into the game and I get more of a sense for what it is as a game to the fullest, I might just leave a Steam review that's like, okay, if you want to learn about the items, systems, the itemization, all that stuff, there are other reviews. I just want to talk about the world and story. Because games like Torchlight might have taught us to not care about them, but I'm here for them. Oh, I forgot to mention I'm playing a mage. It was my intention to play as a battle mage, or the one that wields a sword, spell sword. The problem is I'm playing Oblivion and Last Epoch at the same time, and they have different names for these same similar classes. Anyway, I'm planning on specializing in that direction, but I'm kind of being won over by the idea of being an elementalist. I don't know. It has got this interesting thing, I guess, to talk about the things that we care about as ISO ARPG enjoyers for just a minute. It has got an interesting thing where it seems like you level up your spells. That's kind of what we're going with for like a Paragon style progression system, is we specialize in individual spells and build the spells to do particular things, and I really like that particular flavor of that particular system. That's a cool idea. But yeah, that setting is a really fun excuse to just go crazy with varied, different timelines, which I get the gist of. That's what we do in Endgame. We go to various branching timelines that could have been or whatever, and so I've seen one is called like the Age of Dragons or something that doesn't happen in the main timeline or the main story, but if we want to create a tile set which is just all to do with dragons, we can, and it makes sense for our game, and I think thumbs up. That's a really good idea. But yes, stay tuned. I will be continuing to play that game into the near future, and I will let you know what I think. I do have another video game to talk about this week, because I'm a gamer, alright? And I can play multiple games in a single week, alright? And that's this small little indie game you might have heard of, called Minecraft. I am sure it is just because of the Minecraft movie that has recently come out, but that Minecraft has been having a bit of a resurgence of interest and players, the likes of which I don't think we've really seen since the Caves and Cliffs update. And the fun part about this is one of my friends was like, hey, I've set up a realm, and like, do you want to come play on it? And nothing is better in Minecraft than being able to play on a cute little private realm with your friend group. It's so wholesome and so fun. I feel like no matter where I am in life, you could take me at any given point in time and say, hey, I've set up a little Minecraft server, do you want to play it? And I'll be like, yeah, I do want to play it actually. Yeah, I do feel like playing Minecraft with my friends. There's something magical about Minecraft, I think, when you've just got your friend group together and you're building a cozy little town and you're not too worried about progressing the survival side of a game. For instance, I just spent a whole bunch of time building a little stone brick tower, and all of our buildings are connected, and we've got little pathways, and we work together to make the pathways look good, and Risa's got a little farm, and it's so nice. I haven't made a Minecraft shenanigans video in ages, but I've probably collected enough video clips of me just playing it, like, by myself offline to make one of those videos, so keep an eye out for that in the future, I guess. But it's fun to consider that I've not really spent a whole lot of time in the survival game mode of Minecraft for a while now, so the game has actually evolved enough to the point where there are things that I can discover in the game that I didn't know existed, like armadillos and the ability to ride camels and shit. Like, on the one hand, you've got updates that I knew about but just haven't really interacted with, like the nether biomes and netherite and all that stuff, and on the other hand, you've got things which I didn't even know existed, like spyglasses. You remember in Minecraft, like, I forget what it's called now, but there was this mod pack that pretty much everyone used. I think it was called Optifine, actually, where it was just like this little optimization mod pack where, you know, you could connect glass textures, or you can do little things like that. And one of the things you could do was assign a button to zoom in and see things in the distance a little bit easier, and that's what you can do with spyglasses, and it's just real nice. But yeah, there's something so pleasant and charming about just having this shared virtual space, even if it's in a game that you've all played hundreds of hours of before. It's just nice to have a little community hub of houses that we've built that look cute, and like offering each other, you know, little bits of advice like, oh, have you tried maybe using a different wood color for like the bench or something, and oh, I think this would look really nice like this, and oh, this is really cool, and it's just recommend it. If you don't have enough friends, just clone yourself, I guess. No, that wouldn't work. These opportunities come across quite rarely in my friend group, so yeah, I'm having a great time. I will say it is downright impressive how little Realms technology has advanced since I last used it probably about a decade ago. It's wild to me that, for instance, we still don't just have the simple ability to be able to choose between a selection of worlds uploaded to the server, so we could play a survival world or a creative mode world without requiring the person who owns the realm to manually switch it out. Minecraft does now have the ability to teleport to players at a command. It might have had that for the last 10 years, I don't know. This is how Minecraft works for me now. But that is something that it was missing for a long time, and is one of those basic server plugins that I always missed. But as far as I can tell, we still don't have the ability to, like, set teleportation points with server commands, which would be a nice thing to do. Like, if we have cheats enabled, we should be allowed to do stuff like that. I mean, you can do it with command blocks, but it's kind of a faff. Now, in terms of other media, like what I've been reading, I'm still... Well, I don't know if I even talked about this last week. I don't always include this section in my weekly Waypoint. It kind of depends how much I've got to talk about. But after finishing Mistborn's Secret History and Era 1 in general a few weeks ago, I picked up Warbreaker, and I'm probably only about a third of a way through Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, which is one of his standalone novels for those of you who are unaware. But I'm enjoying it. It's a pretty interesting book. I think I like it a little bit more than Elantris so far. I think I did mention this last week. I'm definitely still kind of having, like, I miss the Mistborn world. Like, that problem is probably why I just haven't sunk more time and interest into that book. But I'm having a good time with it so far. Turns out Minecraft is another one of those games that I can play while listening to audiobooks. At least so long as I'm doing something very rudimentary like mining out a giant tunnel. If anyone who's on the Minecraft server with me wonders why my tower has so many basement floors, it's because I just listened to an audiobook and went on automatic. I have no idea what to fill those floors with. But the other book I'm currently reading is Book 4 of Sun Eater Kingdoms of Death, and I have to say I am just so addicted to that book right now. I'm always bummed out because usually I read before I go to sleep at night in bed. I'm always bummed out when I'm too tired to continue reading. I'm like, no, but it's so good though. I guess I should probably take that as a sign to just continue reading it outside of my usual reading hours. But yeah, keeping it as vague and spoiler-free as possible, I heard some rumblings and there was a lot of foreshadowing about the plot points that this book would be tackling. And I was a little worried that it would lose me with those plot points because I don't tend to like that kind of story, or, you know, it tends to slow the story down or whatever, but actually it's been really interesting and I've been really liking it. I'll get more into that in the actual book review. Speaking of, by the way, don't forget my second YouTube channel at Kritigri Talks, where I've been posting my Doctor Who episode reviews weekly, as well as the book reviews of what I've been reading. But yeah, Docky Who, so far, solid season. I haven't spent as much time reading comics lately. In fact, I should probably cancel my DC Universe subscription. I think I just hit an era of The Flash where I was like, I don't know if they changed writers or whatever, I wasn't really paying attention to that, but some of the storylines they're tackling now are just not hitting for me. And that's Rebirth era The Flash, around the time that they start talking about the other forces once again. It's not something that really appeals to me. I have been checking in with Ultimate Spider-Man occasionally as that updates on Marvel Unlimited, and I'm still having a really good time with that. Oh, I did start reading X-Men on Marvel, like some of the old stuff. I should probably get back to that. Sometimes I'm able to juggle whether I'm going to read my book at night, whether I'm going to read comics at night, that sort of thing. And then sometimes Sun Eater gets really good and it just consumes everything in that particular time period of consuming stories. Anyway, we are rapidly approaching the end of this 7-year anniversary episode. If you're still here, thank you so much. It's always a bit weird, this series, because it's like, how do I hold someone's attention when I talk about so many separate different things? I don't really have this thing that I talk about every week, apart from just the very vague notion of games what I've been playing. This really does feel like the series that I just come to ramble about whatever fixations have gripped me that week, and sometimes it's different every week, and then sometimes it's the same thing for like a month on end and I run out of things to talk about very quickly. It's kind of the reason why I've changed this series to be a little bit more about visiting old games. Not exclusively, but definitely it's something that we like to do, because it gives me the opportunity to be like, I'm gonna spend half of this video or less talking about the game that we're playing this week, because if all I've been playing that week is World of Warcraft, I'm not going to have much to say. All the same, it's really fun to think of a Waypoint as like this thing that I've done for so long in my life that it will kind of always be a part of, I guess, my portfolio in a weird way. Because when you've done something every week without fail that you enjoy doing, you create like this, I don't know if you would call this art, but like this creative thing every week for 7 years. It becomes like part of your life. Like it becomes a part of, like, it's a factoid, right? Like if I stopped doing this today, 10 years from now, I would still be able to say, oh yeah, and I created a series called The Weekly Waypoint every week for 7 years, you know? Like when you reach that kind of a timescale, it becomes a lifelong, I don't know, accomplishment. It sounds a little like self-aggrandizing to put it that way, but because this does just feel like a thing I do for fun. But I don't know, it's cool. I have no plans of stopping anytime soon. In future weeks, we will continue to revisit Tony Hawk's games. I don't really know what we're going to do with American Wasteland, because that does seem to have almost twice as many levels as previous Tony Hawk's games. I might just do like half the levels one week and half the levels another week. But I did recently pick up Pro Skater 1 and 2 on Steam, despite already owning it on PS4, because I don't play that anymore. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next time.